Heyo, this is episode 190 of Herpetological Highlights, fast approaching the 200 episode mark. Probably need to think about what we're going to do for it. I'm Tom Major, co-hosting with me as per usual, it's Ben Marshall.
Hey.
How we doing, Ben?
We're good, we're good.
Good, he's post-conference.
I'm awake, I'm alert.
He's awake.
I'm ready to talk about snakes.
You look well, bright-eyed, glossy. The subject of today's paper, the main topic that we're discussing is combat in snakes. We like combat. Combat's a relatable activity. Human beings have a preoccupation with combat. You only have to look at the popularization of blood sport like the UFC and to know that we like, for some reason, watching things fight, especially if they're humans. And this is a relatable paper to do with snakes fighting. Kind of challenging the common assumption about snakes fighting. This one potential to be a bit of a ground shaker in terms of how we perceive one of the main sort of cool behaviors of snakes. Maybe that's a bit of an overstatement. We'll see. But yeah, this is a paper by Farrell, Gull, Boyce, and Richter, 2024. Ritualized male-male combat resulting from intraspecific food competition in 3 Agkistrodon species, published in the Journal of Ethology. So,
Agkistrodon.
Snake Agkistrodon. You want to start with Agkistrodon?
I'd like to start with Agkistrodon because they're wonderful, wonderful snakes.
They're really cool snakes. This genus of pit vipers from North America and down as far as Costa Rica. The name Agkistrodon comes from the Greek words ankistron, which means fishhook, with the weird transliteration of GK in it rather than usual NK. So it should be Agkistrodon, but for some reason this came out as Agkistrodon. And then odon, the last bit of it, means tooth. So it basically means fishhook tooth and is likely a reference to the large fangs of this genus.
And that they like to eat fish, or at least some species of them like to eat fish.
Yes, certainly piscivorous, as you'd expect. That one likes to eat fish, as the name would suggest. The species epithet piscivorous means fish eating. And this group are known colloquially as the water moccasins. And there's lots of research about them because they're found in North America, where lots and lots of researchers are also found. So we're talking about snake combat, Ben.
Yes.
What is snake combat? How would you describe it to me?
If you attach
pretend I don't know anything.
Sort of bits of spaghetti or cooked spaghetti to the end of a food mixer and turned it on.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. They sort of roll together, don't they, the snakes? Yeah. Generally,
it's very odd.
This snake combat kind of just involves the 2 snakes trying to get one over on each other, and they twist together, and the males are they're trying to basically body slam their opponents, get the domineering top position. And it happens quite fast sometimes. It looks quite awkward. Animals fighting with no legs. It's like, guys, come on. But they do it, and it's generally thought to be a behavior which is associated with the mating season. So the males are competing in order to gain superiority to females. Generally, it's considered to take place when there are females nearby. We call it ritualized snake combat, which I always thought was a bit of a weird... I think you've said in the past it's a bit weird to call it that.
Yeah, I can't remember what my original take on it was, but it's because it's not a fight that they're aiming to harm each other. Right, so it's all sort of ceremony, as opposed to an actual, knockout, drag out fight.
Yeah, they're not really generally trying to kill each other. They're generally just battling for supremacy. There's almost like a bit of a gentleman's agreement that they won't actually bite each other.
Right, but there are instances during this sort of combat that bites do occur. That has been observed, so it's not like they'll completely refrain from it.
No, yeah, some species will bite, but by and large, there tends not to be biting seen. Generally speaking, when you're talking about snake combat, it's considered to be this some holds barred, like no fangs puncturing the skin, rolling together. There are exceptions to this. Some venomous snakes bite each other. But yeah, by and large, they're not usually battling. And yeah, like I said, it's usually associated with the mating season. The males are battling for supremacy over mating rights with females, but that isn't exclusively when it's been seen. We've talked in the past about how when you put animals together in unnaturally close proximity with each other or in unnaturally high densities, for example, those turtles that we love coming back to that fight because people are feeding them squid on, people, tourists in boats roll up with squid, and the green sea turtles come along and they're very excited to eat the squid, but because of the squid they start battling each other, fighting over the resource, when ordinarily turtles would very seldom fight. That kind of thing can actually sort of exacerbate these encounters which are violent between animals. And there's been a similar story for vipers in captivity. There's been a few cases where vipers have kind of burst into combat when presented with food, despite no female being present. So yeah, there's some evidence that in captivity they will fight, but you don't, it's a weird one, because you can never really be that sure whether they're fighting or what they're fighting over, or whether it's just like, oh, I'll fight you because I think one day you might be my mating competitor.
Yes.
But this paper's trying to sort of unpick reasons for wild snakes fighting, isn't it? And they had I think it was 4 different observations.
4 across 3 different locations. Yeah. So they were all of them in the US. Kentucky, Florida, North Carolina is where they're spread across, and 3 different species. So we have Contortrix.
Contortrix, yeah.
Piscivorus, and Conanti.
Yeah, so Conanti is the Florida cottonmouth, Agkistrodon Conanti, that's one in Florida. Piscivorus is the northern cottonmouth, and Contortrix is known as the eastern copperhead. Eastern copperhead's like the one that looks more smooth, I always think. It's like a really neat one.
Yes.
Very nice pastel tones.
Yeah.
Yes. Good. But there are all these cool pit vipers from America, and they have weird feeding habits, these things. Like, you usually think of pit vipers, or at least I do, as eating sort of either lizards and frogs, or when they're babies, lizards and frogs, and then some adults if they're small, but then sort of mice as well. But I always think of pit vipers mostly eating frogs, lizards and mice, or other small rodents.
Yep.
But some eat birds, I suppose. It's widening. But these things eat weird foods. They'll eat like fish. They'll eat cicada young. They'll eat other snakes. So they seem to be a little bit more easygoing about what they eat. But yeah, this paper was describing these 4 observations where they'd seen individuals of these pit viper species battling each other, and the implication from this paper was that it wasn't because of mating rights, it was because of food. And all 4 of these actual events took place either when there was food present or outside the mating season of these animals, right?
Or both.
Because
I think that's really where it starts becoming compelling, is you've got something that they could be fighting over, and potentially the absence of the thing that they would usually be fighting over. Because if there was, you take one or the other away, and it starts becoming quite hard to really categorize what that behavior is over. You obviously can't read the minds of these snakes, no matter how hard you try. But even with those 2 lines of evidence of there is something they're fighting over, it's not breeding season, or there's not a female snake present, you're never going to be 100% confident. And I think that's something to sort of bear in mind as we're talking about this paper, is it's trying to read into quite a complex set of motivations, and we can't know for sure.
Yeah, one of the videos was absolutely mad. There were so many snakes. Which one was it? It was the one of... That's
what... We'll throw the links into the videos, the links to the videos into the show notes, so people can go see them themselves and make their own sort of judgments on them. They're all nicely accessible. Really great, intriguing behavioral observations just by themselves, even without the paper's sort of context.
Oh yeah, especially the ones where there's like so many snakes in close proximity, and they're all just like getting stuck in. You usually, I think, we tend to see images and videos of just like two snakes encountering each other and doing the battle. But actually, in reality, it can be like 5, 6, 7, 8 snakes, all just in a kind of weird Thunderdome-esque sort of brawl.
Yeah, brawl. Yeah.
Really. A couple of things I would say about this. Like, I must confess, I am not entirely convinced that these fights, I mean, I don't know. It kind of seems like the food in some of them might be contributing. I just don't know whether, I just can't see a way to unpick the fact that these snakes are in close proximity and the fact that they're eating. Like, if the males come into close proximity because they're feeding on the same things, like, it would appear outwardly as food competition, but it could just be that if they come into proximity, they'll fight.
Yes.
And the food is something which is drawing them together. The other thing I would say is that they use the timing of the the known mating seasons of these animals to justify the fact that these observations are taking place outside of those periods.
Yep.
For a couple of them at least, I would say, the ones that are taking place in late July, they're normally mating in the summer and autumn, or as the Americans call it, the fall. So July, it's not late summer. They generally mate in late summer, fall. It's not late summer, but it's pretty close. Like, late summer's August, September in my mind. It's not that far away. And a lot of animals, their phenology, so the timing of these key events in their lives, hibernation for bears, flowering for plants, all of these things are changing dramatically at the moment because of climate change. Like, they're changing at incredible rates. And so I don't think it's that much of a stretch to think that the mating season of these snakes could have moved forward by a few weeks or even a month.
Well, that would be a quite fair, you could sort of colour this whole thing as a year-long round competition for mates and longer competitive sort of breeding seasons than previously thought, right? That's the way you could shift this whole idea.
Yeah. That is another way of looking at it, yeah.
And I think that's probably what people would have concluded if it hadn't been for the food presence.
Yeah. So it's a weird one. These observations are really cool. There's absolutely no denying that. They're really, really cool. And it definitely adds a new dynamic, which was just something which I think a lot of people would have just discounted. And the fact that the food is present and that some of them interact with the food during is kind of like pause to think about what's actually causing it. But yeah, they say in this paper we need to do more observations. It's a really difficult nut to crack. I think the thing would be is if you saw a male and a female fighting, then maybe that would be a bit more compelling because they're not in direct competition for mates. But I don't know that females actually engage in this behavior at all.
Yes. But then does that... Yes. What would be the ideal study to unpick this then? If you had blank check, how do you piece apart this? Would it be intervention in the wild sort of thing, deploying prey to a known group, a previously sort of found group of snakes, and see if that prompts it, trying to sort of elicit this behavior on demand with an intervention?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult one. I feel like the one thing you really need to do is to ensure that there's no females about. And just because you can't see them doesn't mean they're not there.
Well,
and something they said in here,
they don't even need to be there, though. Right? Because you could have these snakes competing for areas that they know females return to. Like, there's a whole spatial component that I think could be quite a big deal here as well. Like, I'm going to fight this snake now while I'm feeling sort of feisty and strong, because the chances are it won't return here in a month's time when it actually matters. I don't know how much planning goes into this. I don't know how much of it's reactionary. I assume that sort of spatially they have a lot of overlap, just judging by the sheer number of animals in the same location. But that doesn't mean they don't remember losing a fight a month ago.
Yeah. I'm struggling to think of a way to do this without having the same issues that we're describing. Like, if you're throwing a mouse to two males and then they start battling, how are you ever going to know that they're not battling either a potential one-day female and not the mouse?
One way to sort of on a broader scale, getting away from these species in particular, is if there was competition over food resources, would you expect to see male-male combat in a species that doesn't exhibit male bisexual dimorphism? Because that is a link, isn't it? You tend to see this male-male combat in species that have male bias dimorphism.
So yeah, species which have bigger males generally have combat.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, would you expect to see... okay. So would you expect to see... Wait, run it by me again.
Well, I'm just thinking, so you've got this connection between this combat and sort of something that's quite clearly connected to sex with the male bias, right? You've got that connection. But if there is an instance of it occurring in a species that doesn't have that male bias dimorphism, so it's disconnected from sort of success or that sort of selective pressure on sexual difference, would that be easier to attribute to competition over food? Because you've broken that connection between, or weaken that connection. There might still be one, it's just the females are even bigger.
Yeah, maybe. The only thing I would say is that, like, if they're still competing for food, I think the outcome, if you're bigger, is still likely to be that you'll win. So surely the competing for food or competing with females, there's still the same selective pressure to be bigger.
Yes.
To win. So even if you're winning food, you're going to be bigger. But if you're winning females, you're also going to be bigger because being bigger is better.
Right. And in the instance where you do get male bias dimorphism, the suggestion would be maybe there's two selective pressures pushing them to be bigger, and that's what sort of makes them larger than the females, potentially?
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
Because I'm thinking, actually, I'm thinking pit vipers themselves in Southeast Asia, the males will, compete, but they're smaller than the females, aren't they?
So what you're saying is to do like a meta-analysis where you look to see if they exhibit battling over food and battling over females, and if you see that the ones which battle over the females but not the food are generally the ones that are not bigger for the males than the females, you'd have like a bit of a bit of a relationship.
Maybe. Just because if it was just food, I'd expect the females to benefit in the same way. Obviously, I think your thing of just finding females engaging in this behavior would be the slam dunk.
Yeah, it would be really good. I think that's where we should focus. Get some vipers, put them in a Thunderdome, get them real hungry.
Yeah,
all females. Throw a mouse in there. Do they battle? Can they battle? And then we'd know.
Yeah.
But yeah, really cool paper, and I think it definitely raises some cool questions about whether or not snakes are fighting for more reasons than we thought. My gut tells me that it's probably true. Like, what other animals fight over resources?
Right?
Why wouldn't snakes?
It's not exactly hard to believe that they would be competing over food at all.
Yeah.
And
so I'm just...
Yeah. It
My
feels
cynicism,
like everything else does.
Exactly, yeah. You went to the supermarket in lockdown, like, you know how it was. So, yeah. I think my cynicism is just born out of the fact that, like, I don't see this as enough evidence to say that they're 100% definitely fighting over food. But I do think it's, like, really presented a massive smoking gun that probably shows that. But I just want to stop short of being certain.
Well, and I think they make a very good sort of recommendation, or sort of wrapping up the conclusion, is that when witnessing male-male combat, you shouldn't automatically assume that it is mate access driven combat. And I think that's a really fair comment, and absolutely what people should be taking away from the paper is sort of assuming less about these behaviors that it's very hard to assign intent to.
Yeah. I wonder, this kind of this could lead on to so much cool stuff, because we know there's like some sociality in pit vipers.
Definitely. Yeah.
Behavior which is related to their social interactions. They prefer family over non-family when they're choosing you to hang out with, that kind of stuff. I wonder if there's a relatedness element to them combating as well. That'd be kind of crazy. Like, they're less likely to combat with their sort of close relatives, which which then might also, I mean, then again, you can't really unpick that because they're probably they would probably be less likely to combat with their close relatives for mating rights anyway, because they'd probably be competing for different mates. But also maybe they would be less willing to compete with their relatives if they want their relatives to also succeed food-wise. Anyway, that's a bit of a, that's getting a bit too crazy. I'm struggling to keep track of my own thoughts. So let's move on, shall we? Have you got anything else about the Agkistrodon?
No, I just highly recommend people to check out the videos themselves and see what folk think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking at the videos and, deciding whether you think these snakes are fighting over food or mates. All right, let's move on. We're heading a little bit south for our species of the bi-week. All right. So, this is a paper by Arteaga, Pyron, Batista, Vieira, Meneses Pelayo, Smith, Barrio Amorós, Koch, Agne, Valencia, Bustamante, and Harris. Published in 2024, huge paper, systematic revision of the Eyelash Palm-Pitviper Bothriechis schlegelii, with the description of 5 new species and revalidation of 3, published in Evolutionary Systematics. So, it's been out for a couple of months now, it exploded onto the scene. One of the most popular, iconic snake species in the world, the Eyelash Palm-Pitviper Bothriechis schlegelii. My favourite snake changes a bit, but at the minute, it's there. It's my favourite.
It's always up there, though, isn't it?
Oh, it's got to be. But it's confusing now because the systematics and the names and the taxonomy of these species have all changed with the publication of this paper. So let's take it back. Ben, to the distant past. The Eyelash Palm-Pitviper was first described in 1846 by Arnold Berthold, based on a juvenile specimen from Colombia, and he called it Trognocephalus schlegelii. It has subsequently been changed to Bothriechis schlegelii, so the Eyelash Palm-Pitviper was known as Bothriechis schlegelii, and it was this really widespread species found all the way from like Costa Rica down through Central America into like Colombia, in Panama. Is there anywhere else it was found? Just looking at the map. Did it go further north than Costa Rica? Is it Mexico as well? Way further north. So all the way up into Central America, up into looks like up into Mexico. My Central American geography is not very good, but Mexico becomes North America, doesn't it? Or is it still Central America? Anyway, possibly a stupid question, but this species was extremely widespread. And there has been another species described, Bothriechis supraciliaris, which was elevated to full species in 1998. That is the one which is really moss-like, almost furry. It's found in like southern Costa Rica and into Panama. It has a cool name, supraciliaris, which means above eyelash, which means the eyelash above the scales, which is cool. Basically this whole group has been the subject of a little bit of taxonomic confusion. And these authors set out to kind of try and solve that. And I think they did it in a very, very thorough way. Basically the one species of Bothriechis schlegelii has become 8. 10 really, if you consider, there's 10 in the entire eyelash clade. The main thing this paper did was kind of like split them up. And because of the way that the species were previously described, they had to give the original name Bothriechis schlegelii because it was originally described from Colombia. It's now Bothriechis schlegelii that now describes snakes from the kind of central mountains of Colombia. It's Colombia's Cordillera Central and Occidental. The original Bothriechis schlegelii now is endemic to Colombia, and it's in elevations between 1,000 and 2,600 meters above sea level. So it's just kind of like high elevation pit viper now, and a Colombian endemic. So that's schlegelii. But the ones from the widespread ones from Costa Rica, which were previously Bothriechis schlegelii, including the yellow ones, which are the kind of iconic ones, they've now been changed to Bothriechis nigro-adspersus, which comes from the Latin word nigrum, meaning black, and adspersus, meaning sprinkled, because the yellow ones, some of them have these like black speckles scattered throughout the dorsal coloration.
Pepper.
A dusting of pepper, yeah, which is really cool. It's a great name, nigro-adspersus. The only problem is it only really describes the yellow ones, and most of them just straight up aren't yellow.
Yes, so I think this is
a bit of a weird name.
The diversity of colour and sort of pattern is outrageous. Quite frankly, outrageous.
I know, yeah, and the figures in this paper, I mean, they're just like insane. Like, they're so beautiful. I was thinking about getting one of them printed off as a poster. But yeah, so basically, if your favorite snake was Bothriechis schlegelii, the eyelash Palm-Pitviper, now your favorite snake is Bothriechis nigro-adspersus, right? You got to get used to it.
Unless you were specifically really liking the ones endemically found in central Colombia.
In which case, keep it the same. But I mean, most of us like the yellow ones, and they call it the oropel in Spanish, which just means golden. So when I was in Costa Rica, I was like, oropel, asking everyone. Everyone's like, yeah, I saw one, mate. Yeah, there's a picture on my phone. But I didn't see one. But yeah, we managed to see one of the green and red mottled ones, which are really beautiful in their own right. Yeah, I would have probably called this something else. I'd have probably called it something to do with the variability of the pattern. But hey, you know, not my decision. These authors have got their own reasons for doing things. And I actually asked one of my guides while I was in Costa Rica what he thought of the because we found one, and he was like, oh yeah, it's Bothriechis nigro-adspersus, and I was like, okay, yeah, this guy's got the new name, even though it only came out like 2 weeks before. So I was like, what do you think of the paper? I was like, yeah, he's a pro, man. These guys are serious. And I was like, what do you think of the paper? And he was like, well, I thought it was interesting, but he said, to be honest with you, I didn't really understand the splitting up of all these species. Like, why not just have it all as one species with variation? He said, I think it's because they want to sell more reptile ID guides. And I was like, yeah, I don't know.
It's Big Field Guide.
It's Big Field Guide. Yeah, which I obviously I don't really think that's true. But I thought it was an interesting take anyway. I mean, like, you know, someone from Costa Rica just thinks, well, who cares really? They're all just pit vipers. But, you know,
if you want to go that route, you could just, you know, Bothriechis, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to go to species level to describe things.
Yeah. I mean, some of the ones in the south here are like split up a lot. I don't know. It's kind of above my pay grade to decide whether that's good or not. It does seem like the ones in the south are very heavily split, but hey, certainly I think the ones in the north, it's justifiably, they're very different. They've done a really stand-up job of delineating all these species, pointing out their new ranges. There's another cool one called Bothriechis torvus, which is the one from northern Colombia and extreme southeastern Panama. And they named this one torvus because it's a Latin word meaning fierce, which refers to the protruding scales above the eyes, which apparently make it look fierce. And the sort of Spanish authors describe this as an air feroce, an air of ferocity, which I quite like.
They do look quite angry, to be fair.
They look mean, yeah. They look mean, but they also look kind of cute.
They definitely
they're not
look kind of cute. Definitely.
Like, you want to talk about a mean snake from Costa Rica, you're looking at the fur lance. Those things look like they want to kill you. But yeah, this figure of Bothriechis nigro-adspersus, the ones from Costa Rica and Panama, I mean, the variation is just insane. You can get plain yellow ones, you can get yellow ones with white blotches, you can get yellow ones with black spots, you can get orange ones with green blotches, you can get grey ones, you can get plain white ones, you can get red ones with orange bands, you can get, you know, green with red dots, you can get, yeah, it's just wild, the level of variation that exists in this snake. And apparently as well, you can get, like, one mother can have a litter of babies with multiple colours. I saw a photo in a textbook of a yellow mother that had given birth to 50% yellow babies and 50% green babies. So it's not like they're, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it opens up a whole suite of questions about their... What did you say about?
I wonder what causes it, the variation.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one. It's really cool that variation like this is maintained so
yes,
thoroughly.
Exactly. And over quite a wide area.
Yeah, well, I think it's a weird one because, like, in eastern Costa Rica on the Caribbean coast, I know that a lot of that area was logged and then regrew, and there's like a few areas where the yellow ones are like massively overrepresented. Whether that's like some result of human activity and then they all exploded out of like a few yellow ones again, I don't know. But
yeah, bottlenecking or environmental, it could go either way, couldn't it?
Yeah, and then I was speaking to Brian Kubicki at the Costa Rican Amphibian Conservation Centre, and he said that it tends to be ones at slightly higher elevation that are more mottled.
Interesting.
Yeah, so whether that plays a role in it as well, I don't know. But yeah, really, really awesome species. And yeah, there's just banging pictures of all of them. Supraciliaris is a really cool snake. It's just way more mossy than the others, especially the juveniles. They've got like crazily spiky heads. But yeah, so the ones that are now known as schlegelii from Colombia, they tend to be more greeny or bluey. They don't have the sort of yellow. Yeah, but highly variable again. Really, really variable. I mean, they're all variable, really, aren't they? All the species have at least some degree of variability.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're all variable. I don't think there's any in that paper that's looking like one photo would really do them justice.
Yeah, but yeah, I would say if you want to know now, if you want to work out which of the Bothriechis species you're seeing in Central America, you basically just have to look at this map and it'll tell you. There's very little in the way of sympatry between these species. I think some of them overlap, but by and large, you can tell which one you've got based on geography, which is quite convenient. So yeah, congratulations to the authors. Bothriechis schlegelii has now been split up. There are 10 species in the eyelash clade of Bothriechis, and yeah, hopefully I'll be able to collect them all in my lifetime.
That's a lot.
That'd be nice. That'd be a lot.
That's ambitious.
Yeah, it is really ambitious, actually. Yeah, it's probably wildly ambitious. Oh, I'll probably die without doing that, but never mind. Okay. Hopefully we did that some justice. It's a really complicated, long paper describing lots of species, so we didn't want to go too hard on it, but yeah. Enough to know that it's been split up. If you liked schlegelii, you now like Nigra adspersus, probably. Yeah. So, have you got any other business this week?
No, I do not.
Okay, so I have a little bit. So, first of all, there was this news article about a designer called Nancy. What's her name? Nancy Gonzalez. And she's gone to prison, Ben, because she was a celebrity fashion designer who got couriers to transport bags made of reptiles, I think mostly crocodiles, illegally from Colombia to the US on commercial flights. And this is a massive, massive designer. She's received 18 months in prison, which I just thought was quite good, because you don't normally see convictions from people smuggling reptile bits. And yeah, just because you're a massive designer making loads and loads of money doesn't mean that you can just do what you want. I mean, you know, python skin and crocodile skin, they're ghastly. I don't understand why anyone would wear it. It looks horrible on anything other than a reptile. But hey, that's what happens. And yeah, she's been given prison time. You know, she was importing a lot of stuff legally, but this is someone who provides bags to like Salma Hayek, Britney Spears, big names, quite famous.
Well, and you know, these protections are there for a reason.
Exactly. You can do it legally. You just have to do it legally. Like, don't sneak stuff through.
Well, it's deeply frustrating with that sort of stuff too, because it completely destroys the ability to keep track of how much is being used, the sort of demand and the shift. And it's like you've got no hope of trying to judge the impacts on, well, wild and or sort of captive populations if that's not being recorded, and just sort of smuggling it through undermines that dramatically. So
yeah, Nancy, you've got 18 months now to think about the nice crocodile reserve you're going to build when you get out as a way of appeasing the crocodile gods. That would be nice. Hopefully with all that design and money. Anyway, other business wise, Yes, so Ben, remember 2 episodes ago we did the new species of crate,
yes,
Bungarus sagittatus,
with the little stripes on its subcaudals.
Yeah, and so that was published by our
chevrons.
friend chevrons on the snake. Yeah, arrows. So that was published. Lead author of that paper was our friend Axonium, and he and his co-authors published this species, which is from Cal Krakom, as part of the Tenasserim mountain range. They called it Bungarus sagittatus. However, in the paper, there was no common name mentioned. So I was like, well, it'd be nice to say a common name. So I messaged Arm, who, full credit to Arm, got back to me virtually immediately. I just failed to notice before the last episode. But now we have it as an AOB. And I said to him, is there a common name? Congratulations, yada, yada. And he said, hi, Tom, thank you very much. I didn't place the common name of the snake in the paper, but I would call it Tenasserim crate, as they are now only found on this mountain range. So the Tenasserim crate, Bungarus sagittatus.
It's got quite a nice ring to it too, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's a local endemic. Why not use that as the common name? Really nice. So yeah, thanks, Arm, and hopefully more cool venomous snakes coming from that crew. And just finally, one last AOB to say thanks to our newest Patreon, Daniel Stevens.
Thank you.
Big ups. And if anyone else wants to become a Patreon, you can at patreon.com/herphighlights. So I haven't got any other business beyond that, Ben. I don't think you have either.
Nope.
So if you want to get in touch with us, you can, herphighlights@gmail.com. If you'd like to ask us a question, make a comment, send us a frog call, or other reptile or amphibian sound.
Yeah. I mean, frog calls are default, but had a gecko the other day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a mean trick. All right, so all that remains to be said is thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.